Hello, welcome to the Pastor and
Hey,
Professor
everybody.
Show, as I have calls now. So yeah, welcome to the show. If you're just joining us for the first time because it's in the middle of the day randomly, welcome. Yeah, so this is the Professor or Pastor and Professor Show. I am Jay Pine, aka Professor Q, along with Doug Levy, and we're going live early today.
AKA the
AKA the
pastor.
pastor. Oh yes. Sorry, I'm there's no guarantees on this show today.
That's right.
I have my live sports bias show tonight, my Noggin show that actually Doug's going to be a contestant on, which is going to be awesome.
Ooh.
And so I've been racing to get ready for that, and we were going to record the show and then post it, but we ran into some tech issues and timing issues, and so we're like about I don't know 15 minutes ago we said, hey, let's just go live now. So yeah,
Let's do it.
so we weren't necessarily completely prepared for this, but so hopefully we're going to reach some new people today, Doug. Middle
Yes,
day.
absolutely.
So
Hopefully, two new ones right there and more to come.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's still on. I was going to take that off. I don't like seeing that. But anyway, it's a good barometer. But so how was your week?
It's okay. I'm having car issues.
Oh no.
And yeah, but I have driven this thing like
You
crazy
said
doing
300
what I
some
do.
thousand miles or something on it.
Not quite, but I'm creeping up on it. And yeah, so everything that wears out at about that mileage, is starting to wear out. So, but thankfully, I've got good friends. And one of them who happened to be going out of town said, "Why don't you borrow my car for a week?" So, boom,
That's
the Lord's
nice.
taking care of me. I got a nice car to drive for the week. Then
Yeah,
we'll
that
figure out
doesn't.
what to do with mine.
That's generally not good when you're a Lyft and Uber driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it's how you make your money. But I am not my provider. God is my provider. So we will say, Lord, it's if it's your will, it's your bill.
I like that. I haven't heard that one before. Um, so it is March Madness, my friend,
Yes.
and our teams are.
Yes.
Well, some of our teams are in it. Your Hokies got in.
They did.
Uh,
They are rolling right now.
they are.
Can they stay rolling? That's the question.
Yeah, they wouldn't have got in if they wouldn't have won. So they took.
No, they would have been. They
no,
would have been the last four.
yeah,
They would have been the last
no,
four.
they wouldn't
Yep,
have.
they would
They
have
would.
done.
They would
Now,
have been
with
out.
that run,
Wyoming.
beating
Well,
Notre Dame and UNC back to back, that would have got them in the last four.
I don't
Guaranteed.
think so.
But it doesn't matter now.
It doesn't matter now. I do have them winning a game. I do have
Well,
them winning
thank
a
you.
game. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do not have my Buckeyes winning a game.
Wow.
I
Shocking.
I did a show on, excuse me, on Monday, I think, with my friend Joe. Excuse me. Who's also going to be on the show tonight, the Knockin' Noggins live trivia show. We were talking about something that I don't remember now. What was I saying?
Ohio State not winning.
Yeah. It was something about college basketball of some sort.
Yeah.
No idea where I was going with it. This is what happens when you go live when you're unprepared. No, we were doing a show and kind of a bracket reveal reaction show, and we did our predictions. And again, we were scrambling because we did the show at 8, and the bracket came out at 6. And so we were trying to fill out our brackets and then have a kind of a pre-show meeting and talk about, our picks and so forth, which we didn't really do. So we kind of did it live. But yeah, I don't have Ohio State winning. We were talking about this. This is what I was going to say. See, it's all
Okay.
coming back to me.
It's coming back.
The Big Ten is such a strong conference, but they beat each other up. But there are 6-7 teams in the Big Ten that could go on a run and make it to the Final Four. Ohio State being one of them. They're probably going to lose in the first round. They can put 4 or 5 wins together and go 3 wins to get to the Final Four, but they also can lose in the first round like they did last year to Oral Roberts.
That was a tough one. It's not, and I have to say this, it's not UVA losing to Baltimore of Maryland bad, but it's not great.
To me, it was, Doug. To me, it was.
Okay. Well, but UVA's loss, I just have to say it because I'm a Hokie fan, is the greatest loss of all time in the Big Dance.
Funny you should mention that because one of my shows is coming up this week is the biggest upsets in NCAA tournament history. I have not finalized that list yet.
First number one seed to
The
lose
only one so
to a
far. It's
16.
going to happen again. It'll happen again. There's so
Yeah,
much more
it's a matter
parity.
of time.
And all these one and done teams and so forth. It's going to happen. They're going to run into a team that has some senior leadership and things like that. So I think it'll happen. Not a lot, but I think the potential is there for it to happen more regularly now than it has in the past. But yeah, that was shocking. And then the next year they won the championship.
I know, crazy.
It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, but they never mention that again.
Okay, I didn't know there was that much bitterness. Bitterness.
It's pretty close to.
Oh, come on! Don't even say
Ohio
it.
State.
Don't even
the
go
team
there.
That will not be named.
Oh my gosh. That's ridiculous, Doug. I mean, I know it's your rival, but Ohio State, the team up north rivalry, is the greatest rivalry in all of sports, and everybody knows it.
Okay.
The Yankees and Red Sox fans are going to come out of the woodwork with me on that, but I do have Yankee fans, but no.
Okay. I'll. What was the word I'm looking for? I'll give that one to you.
I already know what's going to happen. I'm going to get text messages from my Oklahoma friends like, "Oh, Oklahoma, Texas." Just look at everybody else. Don't go on my word. Has HBO done a special on your rivalry? No. It's the best rivalry in all sports. Anyway.
Okay.
Anyway.
Moving on.
I'm anxious for the tournament more so than I have been in a while. So I'm when do you guys play? Do you play tomorrow or Friday?
Friday, I think.
I think Ohio State plays Friday too. One of these days, my DePaul Blue Demons will get back in the tournament. They're my basketball love. I'm a huge Ohio State fan, obviously, but DePaul's my But we won't talk about. We will not talk about that. So a couple things happened this week for me, my friend. That I was going to call you, and I don't know how much I'm going to get into it now, but I had a little bit of a meltdown. Was yesterday, the day before. Again, still struggling from the time I told my story here on the show. Excuse me. It's been a little bit different since I've mentioned that a couple times. I think I was in a much better spot prior to telling the story. So I don't know if you have any insight on why that may be. I'd love to hear that. But I had a meltdown driving, and it was. I'm having the remnants of the cognitive issues I'm dealing with are very apparent right now in my head. I have no idea again what I was going to say. I was driving and was having had a meltdown, and I think it just stems from still processing the identity issue, and we dove into that a little bit last week, or heavily last week, which was really helpful. But still, there's still trying to figure out what God has in store for me, and I don't know. I can't really explain it. It was just, I prayed harder than I think I've ever prayed in my life that day. Or maybe it was differently. I prayed differently that day. And I talked about on the last episode I'd mentioned, kind of traditional prayer, what people think of traditional prayer is a little more uncomfortable for me. My prayers are just conversations with God. And so this was more me on my knees talking to God in a way that I haven't done before. I wasn't on my knees driving, by the way.
I was just about to say,
I knew you.
At least you pulled over to the side of the road.
I knew you
that
were
was
going
the case.
I almost had to pull over. I couldn't see because my tears were. I don't know. I think it was just a release too of the last couple of weeks and having this all kind of in me and trying to figure it out. I don't know. I'm not making any sense. The people that have seen the show, it'll make some sense too. But I'm still struggling.
Yeah, and I think as you were saying that, especially as you tie it into identity and figuring that out, you got to see yourself kind of in reality as a new creation, right? So after you had your situation where you went to heaven and came back, you're kind of starting clean slate. And if we were to parallel that or use an example, of saying, all right, like you're a newborn babe, right, who's starting on this new journey and new purpose and new identity, you know, you're not gonna you're not gonna be riding your bike yet, let alone even running. You're
Yeah.
you're you're learning to walk, and so
Yeah.
that's a process. And there's for you, I think it's giving yourself grace, being in this slow process.
Yeah.
And we've talked a little bit about that in different
Yeah.
situations and different ways that would apply. And I think it's just that not wanting to be ahead of where God wants you to be. Last week we talked about Him preparing you, for what lies ahead. and
Yeah.
and uh, and it sucks. I mean, you know, wanting to, kind of say, all right, give me my thing, let me run with it. But it's all a part of the process of you kind of figuring out all these new dynamics, even like you're talking about learning how to pray. Even though I would tell you the organic, conversational friendship prayer with God is really what He's after, and not the, here's my religious terminology and
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. So I think you're actually ahead of schedule there. What comes next is you learning how to hear His voice more clearly, so that you can begin to walk out the things that He's asking you to do.
Yeah. I think, when you mentioned like, like being a baby, and I do, I feel like, new, like, like the vision of me being molded clay. I feel like I'm just a slab of clay right now. And like everything in my life is being redone and reinvented. And, and again, I've said this many times, that I 100% believe that the other side of this for me is greatness, and everything that God wanted for me and the person I'm supposed to be, or however you want to say that. And I'm very
Hmm.
thankful that I am 100% confident in that and have 100% faith in that, because I know where that's going. So
Hmm.
I think this would be a lot different story for me if I didn't know that, or I didn't have
Yeah.
faith in that. I don't even, I can't even imagine what it would be like for me if I didn't have that faith. But I think one of the things for me this week was, maybe a little bit of impatience for sure,
Hmm.
and trying to keep things in perspective, and just continue to move forward, and allowing God to do the work He's doing in my life. And I can feel it. I feel it every day. I feel it every second of every day, in a way that I've never had before. But there's a part of me that I think there's definitely, like I mentioned last week too, is like there's some fear has seeped in now that He's revealed some things to me, and I know where things are heading a little bit, um, of not living up to it or letting Him down. And I know that's not accurate, or doesn't matter, but
Yes.
there's still that in me. But more than anything, I think for me, the biggest fear for me is I see this as, oh, I was gonna say once in a lifetime opportunity, and I know, wrong choice of words, but I see this as an opportunity that I absolutely cannot let me pass, can't let pass by. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm afraid that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, or I'm missing something, that I'm letting the opportunities pass me by. Because still, even though I'm moving forward and doing the show, and doing the other show, and just kind of get myself moving, and trying to kind of relearn how to walk, and learn how to do
Hmm.
things, because my brain works differently, and I'm still
Hmm.
struggling. We're still doing tests and stuff, and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But I'm having to relearn how to do things, and refigure out how to do my daily life. And so I'm doing that. When I think, sit back logically, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, what God's asking me doing, and where He's leading me. I do feel that. But then there's another part of me that this is such a big opportunity to become who I am in Him, for me to see
Hmm.
that, and for me to live that, and for me to walk that. And I know that, and it affects every aspect and every relationship in my life. Everything I do, it affects right now. And, and maybe I'm feeling the weight of that, but I feel like I can't let that opportunity pass me by. And I feel a little bit of that. Because I was crying out, I guess, for a sign that I'm on the right path, or I don't know. I'm rambling.
You're on the right path, dude. here's the thing. That surrender is the best place you could possibly be right now, right? You may not know all the details, and really, to be honest with you, God doesn't give all the details
Yeah.
to anybody.
Yeah.
He'll give us hints and signs and things that move us in the right direction, but he doesn't lay it out like here's A, B, and C and D and E for the next part of your life, because then our dependency would be in us
Yeah.
knowing where we're supposed to be, and it would be about us figuring out how to do it. Right. So God always leaves room for us to be dependent on him and trust him as a source and trust him at the next step. So you being in that place of surrender of saying, God, I know, generically what you have for me to walk in, is going to be awesome. And I want to do it. I don't want to miss it. Just being in that place is a place where God can use you. Right. And he can totally just lead you into what it is he has for you. It's the people that have it already figured out. And they're like, here's my plan, my 5-year, my 10-year, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. That God can't budge very much. Right. It's kind of like being in a car with your hands on the steering wheel, but it's in neutral and you're trusting God to push you. You're directing a little bit, but really the reality is he's the one that's moving you into where you're going. So
yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah. I also struggle with, and I shouldn't, maybe I just shouldn't question this. I feel like he's calling me to tell my story, and I don't know what way he's doing, have me do that. We've talked about that, and I think I know where he's pushed me towards. But again, I think he wants me to continue to tell my story, and again, hopefully it gets easier for me. Like I said before, that maybe I wasn't prepared to tell my story the night we told it on the show, which I didn't anticipate going in. I thought I was ready and willing to do it, but I've had it's kind of set me back, which maybe isn't the right choice of words either. Maybe I needed to, deal with all those things. But again, I'm sorry, my brain is really struggling today. I lost my.
Well, let my brain take over.
I will. I'll let your brain take over. I wanted to mention a couple things. We got
please do.
Couple quick announcements that I've made before. Our shows are also on Spotify and Apple and Google Podcast. So if you are one that has a commute or like listen to it when you're shoveling snow or going to the beach, we have audio versions of our shows as well. So they're great when you're in the car ride and things like that. So you can watch us live and see our faces that are made for radio. I made that joke on Facebook this week. Our radio faces, you can watch those live when we do the show, or on YouTube and our Facebook channel. But if you are into audio, podcasts, audiobooks, those type of things, the audio version is available on Spotify, Apple, and Google. And also, just another reminder for Heartbeat Radio. This has been really fun for me, Doug. I've had a lot of traction on this too, on all the episodes, but particularly the Y Store episode I did. So it was the one episode I had that didn't have Christian and gospel music. It was a band that I followed from a small town in Indiana, and how their music impacted my life and my walk with God. And I think a lot of people that know me didn't know this story and know this music, and I've taken them to concerts and so forth. And it's now gone on the Y Store Facebook page. The leader of the band reached out to me, or I reached out to him and he reached out to me, and he's seen it. And a couple of people last night watched it and posted stuff on it. So that's been really rewarding. So there are 4 episodes, and I have a 5th one coming out tomorrow. If I make it through today. If I make it through today. So Heartbeat Radio, you can check that out on Spotify. It's just a Spotify show. You can play the full songs if you have a premium membership or a paid membership from Spotify. If not, you just hear a 30-second clip, but you still get the gist of the songs, and hopefully that'll help you go seek out the songs elsewhere. But that's that. I think that's all the announcements I have. I think that's. Oh no, I have another one. I have my tickets. My birthday was Sunday. Sunday.
Happy birthday, Jay.
Thank you. And I got my Elevation Nights tickets.
Nice.
Indianapolis.
That's a good gift.
Yeah, yes, it is. Indianapolis, April 29th. So we'll get to go see my mom and dad, and kids will get to see their Nana and Papa for a few days. So yeah, and I have not reached out yet to see if I can get media passes for the show, because then I might go to the Columbus one the night after that as well. So we'll see. So
All
I am
right.
going to reach out to them. We just had a lot going on and so forth. So
Yeah, yeah.
Elevation Nights from Elevation Worship. If you're anywhere near Chicago, Columbus, Grand Rapids, up here, DC.
I'm
Don't know,
sure
a whole bunch,
Charlotte, Atlanta.
a whole bunch of places. Yeah, if you're within 5 hours
Yes,
of those shows, go see them. All right,
absolutely.
there's my little spiel. All right, Doug.
That's a good spiel.
Um,
All right.
I am very much looking forward to continue this conversation. And like I said, when I read the book the first time, I loved it. I was so impressed with how well it was written, and I'm not just saying that because you're here. And it's just the way I read, the way my brain worked at the time. It's working differently now. I loved how you always brought things full circle. I mean, you
Mhm.
just always close things out really well, better than most books, if not all books I've read before. And you also use really great biblical references to it too. Which for me, which I don't have a lot of experience with scripture, that's really helpful. So I've gotten so much out of these last few shows just because I'm seeing it from a personal perspective now, which before I was just kind of reading it and kind of reacting to it now with everything that's going on. It's just, I'm seeing it in a totally different light, and I loved it before, but the impact it's having on me right now is just crazy. And also I did receive a couple of emails this week from people that have watched the show, and commented that they're really enjoying our conversations and where this is leading. So
Yeah.
for me, this has all been leading up to this show and talking about the first of the foundational identities. I will let you go.
All right. And just we'll do a little bit of recap, just because I always want to. It's almost like that full circle idea of really laying the foundation so that people understand where we're building off of. And
Yeah.
so I mentioned this question at the top of the last episode. I'll do it again today, which is, what is church? Right. That's the question we constantly need to be asking. Or we need to ask it with an expectation that we're going to get a biblical, solid, truthful answer that we operate in, as opposed to, here's our culture, here's what we've been raised in, here's what we know. So therefore, my answer about what is church is based on my experience rather than God's divine design. So if we ask that question, what is church? As I mentioned last week, um, typically, if you were to ask that across the board in the US for people who are churchgoers, whether they've been churchgoers for a long time or churchgoers relatively short time, you'll get one of three major answers. One is a building, right? It's that place on the street corner where everybody shows up on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. The second is that it's a service, right? At 11 o'clock, we are going to have church. Everybody gathers in a room. We do a series of things, whether it's worship and speaking and praying and passing the offering plate and all the things that they would think would encompass church in it. And we boil church down to a service, right, or an event. Thirdly, and finally, we view it as an organization. We say church is this group that I belong to. It's, I'm a member of this organization, right? Again, God doesn't define church in any of those ways. He doesn't look at church as a building. He doesn't look at church as an event or a service, and he doesn't look at church as an organization. But all of our transactions in relationship to the church are usually based on one of those three things. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to have church. I belong to a church. But we've got to understand that, as we see on the screen in front of us, that God has designed and defined the church in these five foundational identities. They're the five major ones. There are more identities where God describes the church in different ways. Those who assemble together, as ecclesia, it's the Greek word in the New Testament. He refers to the church as a house of prayer. Prayer is very important. It's in big part of my book is talking about, being a house of prayer and what we're called to in that regard. But these five foundational identities are where we have to start when we talk about the identity of the church. What is the church? How did God design the church? How does he define it? So at the top, number 1, the family, number 2, the bride, number 3, the body, number 4, the temple, number 5, the army. Those are the 5 major foundational identities, and they're progressive in nature. In other words, we can't just cherry pick, right? As I say in my book, a lot of people want to be the army right out of the gate. They want to go do spiritual warfare. They want to take ground from the devil. They want to be involved in all those things. But the 4 identities before the army prepare us for being a powerful, victorious army. It would be like drafting a bunch of people and sending them into battle with no training.
Right.
Would be very foolish, right? Which I won't get into what I was going to use as an example. Modern day stupidity.
I know
right? It's happening. It is happening in the world right now. But anyway, so we have to first learn how to be the family, then the bride, then the body, then the temple, and then we can operate as the victorious army. And we're going to dissect family in detail today, but let's move on to the purpose of these identities, because we need to understand that identity proceeds, prepares, and empowers our purpose, right? So finding out who we are individually will help us to walk in our purpose, what we're called to do, who we're called to be and function as. And it also happens corporately. So when God gave these 5 identities for the church, it was so that he could teach us some things, so we could be trained in some things. And all these things work together, again, progressively. So as the family, God teaches us how to love. We're going to really dive into that one today. As the bride, he teaches us purity, right? How to be prepared for him, and set apart. The body, we learn unity, right? All the members of the body have different functions, but they work in unity, right? My hand-eye coordination is semi-working right now. But yes, my hand needs my eye needs my hand. They can't work independently of each other. If you're blind, you're going to have a hard time picking up things. If you don't have a hand, you're really going to have a hard time picking up things, even if you can see. So we learn unity as being a part of the body. In the temple, we experience God's glory. We see examples of this. I bring it out in my book in the Old Testament of when they built the temple, they did dedications and sacrifices, and God shows up so powerfully that the priest couldn't even stand up, right? And God desires for us to experience him, experience his presence. And so as corporately as the temple, it says where 2 or more are gathered, Jesus is in our midst. So he wants to be a part of our meeting. It's a sad day when you go into church and God's not there, but it happens every Sunday all across the United States, and I'm sure all across the world, where they're having a nice religious service, but what I was going to say, the speaker, the honored guest should be God every Sunday. And a lot of times he's not even invited to a service that's supposedly dedicated to him and to his, his will and his purpose. And then finally, as the army, we learn to walk in God's power, right? God doesn't want to just, have us survive. And he does want us to be an army that does take ground, that is victorious in the spiritual realm against the forces of darkness. But we have to learn to do that together as an army. We don't do it as individuals. It's very dangerous going into spiritual warfare by yourself. You always want to do it in the context of being the army. But in order, again, to be the army, we have to start back at the beginning. And the beginning foundation, the very beginning foundation, is family. It's so important. I mean, our interactions with God are based upon relationship. It's not based on religious practice, right? He's not calling us to go do a certain set of things, pray a certain way, do a certain checklist of things. That's not God's desire for us. His desire is to be in relationship with us and for us to be in relationship with him. And the context in which that happens is family, right? It's the building block of society, of all communities. It's the building block of any part of our interactions with each other that's healthy. Is going to start as family. And then he's going to take that, and he's out of that. He's going to show us how to love, right? And I was thinking about this today. I thought, you know, I've done some bonehead things in my family. I've had other members of my family do bonehead things, but at the end of the day, they're still family, right? There's that bond, there's that tie. Actually, one of the words for love in the Bible is storge, and it's a bonding love that really happens. It's described as between a mother and child, but it really is it's a family love.
Mhm.
You're born into a family. You have this type of love that's specific to love for a family. Philos, which is we get Philadelphia brotherly love. It's a responsive love where you do something nice for me, so I do something nice for you, right? That can happen between friends. That can happen
Mhm.
between even acquaintances and
Right.
sometimes strangers.
Mhm.
Um, but storge is this bonding love. But even beyond that, God calls us to walk in agape love, which is unconditional, it's selfless, and it's sacrificial, right? But we see the chance to kind of get trained in that a little bit in our natural families, right? You grow up with your brothers and sisters and two older brothers and a younger sister. So all the stuff my older brothers took out on me, I was their pet torture device. Unfortunately got passed along to my younger sister because I had no other outlet, right? I've since repented to my sister, told her, please forgive me for all the stuff I put you through. Um, but at the end of the day, because I'm her brother, she forgave me. If I was just an acquaintance, she may have never talked to me ever since I was 14 and she was 10. Um, right? And me with my brothers the same way. I mean, I could describe some really terrible things that my brothers did. If you ever watch Malcolm in the Middle, there was some stuff that I could relate to. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was Dewey. So anyway, um, but because we're family, and in a sense, blood is thicker than water, right? At the end of the day, it comes back to, hey, look, I love you because we are related. We are family. And we've got to learn how to do that within the church. But the problem is we start with our mindset and our frame of reference of is as church as an organization, with church as an organization, and we're members, then it becomes, okay, this is business,
Right.
right? I show up, I don't like what you believe, or I don't like how your methodology, or I don't like, how you word things or whatever. I mean, it can be super simple and super tacky, and it could be the color of the carpet and just really dumb stuff that we, decide we're going to break relationship off because it's become business, because I'm a member, you're a member. Who says that your membership is more important than I? Who
Right.
put you on a platform above me, right? And
Mhm.
even if people are in places of authority, like pastoral leadership, or they're spiritual leaders within a church, and that type of stuff, we have to remember we are still brothers and sisters
Right.
in the same family, the Christian family. And that goes across churches, right? The church down the street is not your enemy. The church down the street is not your competition. The church down the street are your cousins in the same family. They're actually technically your brothers and sisters, but
Yeah.
you know, I'm just saying we've got to get out of this mindset of, these are businesses, and these are organizations, and these are things that we can quickly just cut ties and run. That's why we have such dysfunction within the church world today. That's why we have a gazillion denominations. That's why we have churches that are right next to each other or right down the street from each other that can't get along, right? Because they've
Yeah.
decided, oh, it's not important that they're a family member, right? And the reality is we've been trained in this way our entire life, right? Because we have dysfunction in our natural families,
Mhm.
right? My parents were divorced when I was 6. My wife's parents were divorced when she was 6, right? And we've had a healthy dose, an unhealthy dose of dysfunction our entire life, of not really understanding how a healthy family functions, what it looks like,
Mhm.
what the key ingredients are. So we're raised in that, and we're raised in an environment that, that divorce is no big deal, that, we see all kinds of awful things that happen in relationship to families, abuse and all these neglect and all these different things. And we, have learned that family is not healthy, and family is not good. And and we've been trained in it. So
Yeah.
we bring this natural dysfunction into our spiritual family, and we just operate the same way. But that's not God's design, and that's not what God desires. He wants us to learn how to love each other, right? Here's an example. Jesus really created family with his 12 disciples during his 3 years of ministry here on this earth, between 30 and 33 years of age. And he, shows us at the end of his ministry, he gets together with his disciples. They're doing a Passover meal. He knows what's going to happen here. He is well aware that Judas is going to betray him. Peter, the head of the disciples, is going to deny him. And down to the man, with the exception of John, they're all going to abandon him. But what does he do? He gets up from the table. He girds himself. He takes on the role of a servant. The foot washing servant was the lowest of low service positions you could have in a household. And he washes the disciples' feet, knowing that they're going to betray him, deny him, and abandon him. That is a demonstration of love. Could we do the same thing? Could we do it with a person we don't get along with in our church family? Could we do it with the pastor down the street who we don't agree with his theology? Could we do it with a person who betrayed our trust, and caused us to leave our church 5 years ago, right? Very, very, hurtful situation where we felt like we got betrayed or stabbed in the back or whatever. Pick your poison there, right? Could we wash their feet? But that's what God calls us to. So how are we going to learn to do this? That's the big question, is, are we going to allow God to give us this perspective of family and then show us how to actually love people like family in a healthy way?
Yeah. That is such a powerful image for me. I remember when I was going to church in Chicago, in St. Clement's, and not growing up in the church. And then I was actually baptized Catholic as an adult, through my ex marriage. We went through that together, and forgive me, I don't remember what time of year, probably during Lent season or whenever that is, when they do the washing of the feet in the Catholic Church.
We're right in the middle of Lent right now.
Yeah, so I remember the first time I encountered that at church, that they were calling people to come up and wash other people's feet, and I was, I didn't the first year I didn't go up. Obviously, I didn't even know what was going on or the significance of it. But it was powerful watching it, and then the next year I did go up, and I remember just the feeling in the humility in my body, that I was experiencing doing that, and I also was one of the people that were having their feet washed, which I think was even more humility for me. But it was so incredibly powerful, stepping outside, again, breaking down those barriers. Where in the 1 year it happened, it was a gentleman that we didn't get along real well. So it was even more powerful with that. But I also remember one of the years that I was just in a different spot, and I didn't go up, and I felt guilty for it. I guess I was a Catholic for a while, huh? So but that vision of the feet washing is I think extremely powerful, and a really great analogy, especially in this day and age, because there's so much division and there's so much angst and everything going on that trying to envision doing that in today's world, is something. So
well, yeah, and that's the benchmark, isn't it? I mean, again, this is one of my favorite scriptures that I quote as often as I possibly can. Romans 8:29 says, He's predestined us to be conformed to the image of his son, right? So the goal is to look as much like Jesus as possible before we leave this earth. He'll finish the rest of it once we get to heaven. But in that process, that becomes my daily benchmark or watermark or whatever terminology you want to use. He's my measuring stick, right? So if I ever think I've got it together, I got to say, okay, could I wash this person's feet? Could I, humble myself like, you're describing, and actually do it, not just like out of force or out of some kind of religious duty of, all right, God, I'll wash his feet, but actually go, oh my gosh, and it does. I've done it a couple times. I've had it done to me a couple times. And boy, it just puts perspective,
Yep.
especially if it's a situation where it's like, you know, you have some kind of issue going on and you're realizing,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
And then the reflecting back on, this is how much love Jesus had for his people, even knowing that they were going to mess up so bad in the next couple of days,
Yeah.
right? That he was willing to show and demonstrate his love for them by washing their feet. So we have to get to that place. We don't start there usually.
Yeah.
God doesn't say, okay, I got to fix this thing in you. You need more love. Go wash somebody's feet, right? We usually kind of end up
Maybe
there
he
at
needs to
some
give the
point.
world a heart attack like you did me. Maybe it's just
maybe a little wake up call.
Yeah.
But I'll read this passage of scripture out of Galatians 6:10. It says, "So then, while we have opportunity, boy, that was a good one. Let us do good." I got my do in a little early there. Let us do good to all people, especially to those who are of the household of faith. So, it really is practice. When we come together at our gatherings, typically probably a Sunday morning for most people, it's an opportunity to do good, especially those of the household of faith. You're getting free practice. It's like, you'll appreciate the sports analogy here, right? Before game day, there's a lot of practice that takes place, right? And game day for us as believers, as Christians, really should be out in the world. It should be at our work. It should be at our schools. It should be in our neighborhoods. That's where we get to show people, right? Because it also says in the scriptures, they will know you are my disciples by your love for one another, right? And so we get to practice that love, in a mistake-free zone. It should be a mistake-free zone where nobody gets punished, nobody gets frowned upon, nobody gets, laughed at or, criticized badly over falling short or messing up or whatever. Practice. Learn to practice when you get together, doing good in the household of faith, right? Find somebody who's in need, help meet that need. Find somebody who needs a listening ear, be that ear. Find somebody who needs, they're short on their rent, help them make their rent. The homeless guy at the end of the off ramp, carry some protein bars in your car to be able to hand that to that person, or a couple bucks or whatever, right? We get to practice love so that when we get on the big stage, we don't just blow it, or we don't miss an opportunity, or we don't shrink back because we're worried how people are going to, see us and that type of thing. But the problem is when we approach church as an organization, when we show up at church and it's about, they didn't play the song I wanted, or the pastor, I don't like this series that he's teaching on, right?
Yeah.
We're always in this consumer mode of saying, I'm there to get for me. When in reality, we should be showing up to give. We should be showing up to demonstrate love. We should be showing up to learn this process so that the world around us doesn't see a bunch of churches that can't get along and they're constantly arguing about things, but they see churches that are doing it so well, loving each other so well, that they're going, I want to be in that group. I don't have that in my family.
Yeah.
I don't have that in my neighborhood. That's what I'm missing in my life, right? And this is the process that happens. We have to start at this foundational identity of learning to be the church as a family. And when people mess up, they may need some correction. That's okay. Galatians 6 talks about it. Matthew 18 talks about it. But we do it in love. We do it in gentleness. We do it in humility with hopes of restoration. We don't kick them while they're down. We don't boot them to the curb, right? There's so many people who are not going to church now because they've just had such bad church experiences.
Yep.
And the reason they've had a whole lot of bad church experiences, and the reason they've had them is because they haven't encountered family. They haven't encountered, people that are loving them in a way that it makes a difference in their life. I'll never forget this. One of Monica's, girls that she's been discipling for a while, they've now moved from here to Arizona. They're in Prescott. And, she constantly talks about when the very first time she showed up at our church. And and it was as simple as this. And I'm not patting myself on the back here. This is her story. I have never told it to anybody except for now. I'm finally relaying it, but this is years and years of her just kind of reminding me of this. She said when she walked in, I walked up, we got introduced to each other, and I gave her a hug. And when I hugged her, she said she felt the love of God just radiate all over her, out of me, all over her. And she was kind of undone. I mean, like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And she's got a story. I mean, maybe Kathy, we'll get
Bring her
her on
on.
here to
Yeah.
share her God story
Yeah.
because she's got one. I mean, such dysfunction growing up, like parents that, just were not good parents. And she inherited this really bad view of herself from that, and she was looking for love and acceptance, and she walks into this place, and she had a couple not great church experiences before that, and instantly she just feels like the love of God being poured onto her. And all I did was just do what I normally do, which is, because I'm a hugger, if someone's open to that, I'm going to give them a hug.
Yeah.
And so, and it radically transformed her from that point forward. So much growth, so much freedom came into her life, and healing came into her life as a result of that. And that's just super simple. That's one super simple thing,
Yeah.
that changed somebody's life and their trajectory forever. And if we would do more of that as the church, and less politics and less, and I said politics, I mean across the board,
Yeah. Yeah.
less outside politics and less inside politics, and less business and less, you know, organizational stuff. Let's just be family who gets together and loves each other well. Let's start there, and God will build the rest. He'll take care of the rest. As we see, as we progress in these identities, they build on each other. They help us to grow in these other areas, but it has to start first as the family.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a great example, and I have a couple similar story things with hugs and simple, but it is simple things. It's those moments that are just simple and may seem inconsequential to somebody. It could simply be a smile. It could be
Yeah,
just walking down the street instead of being on your phone or, not making eye contact or crossing the street or whatever it is, and actually looking at somebody and seeing somebody and smiling that can make a difference. When we work with kids at Professor Quibley's, we always talk about that and loving kindness. And you don't know how a simple smile can change somebody's day or life.
yeah,
And it is these
yeah,
simple things that we don't do. And I don't have enough perspective, worldly perspective, to know how people behave and act in other countries. But it just seems like we are so far removed from that, and that's why when you see people doing these things, they go viral.
yeah,
They go viral for stuff. I mean, it's good because I want that to spread. And how many of us scroll through our Facebook things or our Twitter or Instagram thing and see those videos, those moments that of people of humanity at its best. Those
yeah.
are the things we like and we share and share with our wives and but yet we don't take the next step of being one of those people doing that. So it's so many of the simple things, just a simple hug or smile can change somebody's day. And to me, like your friend is, those are moments that God shows up in our lives that can transform us.
It is, and we've got to become the leaders of that, right? You mentioned all those videos, and I see a ton of them that aren't like, at least on the surface anyway, they don't, claim to be a Christian, or it's not
Sure.
happening,
Right.
in a church function or a
Yeah.
ministry outreach or whatever. It's just a person being a good person.
Yep.
I'll give another example. We obviously in LA have an opportunity to encounter homeless people a lot, and we've actually been a part of ministries that minister to homeless people. And and I mentioned my example of carrying around some stuff in your car that you can give away to homeless people that are in need, and we do that. Both my wife and I do that. But we've also been a part of a church that cooks meals every day. Um, 2 times a day. Food's donated by, shout out to Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, because they do that. They don't waste their food. They give it away to organizations that are doing those, like food ministries and
Yeah.
those type of things. So but so we've had interactions with a ton of homeless people at that level where we're sitting down and we're sharing a meal together, right? Or we're just getting their
Yeah.
story. So much dignity is restored to them when you treat them like a
Yep.
person,
Yep.
right? So, I mean, obviously, getting able to bless somebody or giving something that they need is important. But what is even more important is looking them in the eyes,
Hmm.
right? Getting their name and
Yeah.
calling them by name, so you're not just, hey, you here's
Yeah.
some food,
Right.
right? Hearing their story, finding out why they're where they're at,
Hmm.
praying for them. I mean, actually encountering them and treating them like a person, because they're
Yep.
treated like a number everywhere else,
Yep.
or they're treated like a scourge or
Less
a
than a number.
problem. Yeah, less than a number. They're treated like a problem, when in reality what they need is somebody just to love on them. You
Yeah.
may not be able to get them off the street. I've never personally, well, we did. We took one person in uh, a long time ago. It was a crazy situation. Eventually got him down to a rehab facility in North Carolina, but I mean, it was, that's not for everybody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But every person can engage at a level where they give some dignity back,
Yeah.
where they show that this person has worth, they have value, they are loved. They can have a future if they choose to. And
Right.
for a lot of them, they have to make the hard choices in order for that to happen. But we've got to get to a place where we can do that on a regular basis. Again, that the church and Christians in the church are leading in demonstrating love. We're leading in demonstrating this is how a healthy family lives in relationship to each other. We forgive, right? And a big part of my book in this section, this chapter about being the family, deals with forgiveness, because we've all got them. We've all got the church hurts and the wounds and the
Yep.
relationship wounds that kind of keep us at arm's distance from people. I'm not going to open myself that way anymore. I'm not going to be vulnerable. I don't trust this person, or I don't trust leadership anymore. And look, the devil is going to make sure that you get wounded by authority growing up, right? It's a given. It's a part of his plan. You can count on it. Whether it's a teacher, a family member, like a parent that lets you down, coach, just all kinds of different people, especially church authority loves to do that when he can have the opportunity to do that, right? He wants to make you distrustful of other people. And if they're in authority, it's bonus points, right? So that keeps us at arm's length. That keeps us from being vulnerable, from opening ourselves up, from love is a two-way street, right? It's not just about going in and hoping that someone loves you well, which again we need to get better at, but it's actually you responding and loving back, learning to love back, and in spite of all these things. So we really individually we need to get healed up of these things, right? Forgiveness is such an important part of us being healthy. When we don't, we're carrying around baggage that we weren't meant to carry. And it really does us harm. It doesn't do the other person harm, right? As they say about unforgiveness, it's like drinking poison yourself and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah.
That's what unforgiveness does. It only hurts you. It rarely hurts the other person, right? They most of the times don't even know that
Yeah.
you have a grudge or a gripe or whatever. You're just you have this unhealed wound in your heart that needs to get healed up, so that you can let other people in. Agape love, God's love that He's calling us to operate in, that He Himself gives to us, only happens when there's vulnerability. I have to be open to receive it, and other people have to be open when I give it. Right? That breaks down barriers. It creates a bond that draws us as individuals. Monica and I were talking about this with some of our spiritual family. We have a sister church in Atlanta, and we have a mother church in Virginia. And we were on a Zoom call the other day, and we were talking about there are people that we don't see all that often, but we go back to this place where we had these experiences together, these love experiences of going to these deep places, whether it was someone being healed of a wound, or someone going through a crisis, and we were there for each other in those moments, that we can go 10, 15 years without seeing these people, and when we get back together, it's as if we just saw each other yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's that love that creates that type of bond and that type of relationship. And that's where God wants us to be as family members in the church. So we've got to get away from this organizational thing. We've got to get away from just being members of this group and going to a place and having a service. We've got to really become family. What is another example of what family looks like? Acts chapter 2, right? People were they were selling their houses and selling their properties and bringing the proceeds and giving them to the church, and the church was giving them to the people who were in need, right? Love meets big needs, right? In First John, he says, how can you see your brother in need and turn away your heart from him and say that you love God, right? So there's some big stuff here. I'm not saying we got to arrive there tomorrow, but we've got to start on this journey of learning to become family and love and see each other as brothers and sisters and not members of a competing organization.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation I'd like to have with you after the show and leading up to our next show is maybe, continue this conversation and then looking at tangible ways that we can take those next steps. And maybe, create some Facebook posts or some social media posts about just, and these aren't going to be, things that people don't know about or think of. Just if it's a nudge for one person to do or a reminder, but it'd be great. But if we could create some kind of list of things that we could do, like smiling, hugging, just simple things, don't cost money, and that could really impact people's lives. I think we should maybe include that in what we're
I concur.
I think next week we need to continue with the family a little bit before we dive into which might be good because there's a couple of things I want to talk about that I'll bring up here too. But I think again, this is a start. I want to reread this section again too. So I think let's have a part 2 of the family next week. And kind of dive a little bit deeper into it, talk about some of the things that we can do in our daily lives and so forth, and kind of bring it more to life for people. And again, just
next week we can have more of a practicum and talk about some ways to actually walk this out, because there is a reality of that, and maybe I'll put together a list between now and then of different things. We'll do it both on the show and then we'll post it on the social pages.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that I wanted to mention. We're already over an hour. 2 things that kind of random things. Something happened, is it yesterday or the day before? I think maybe it was last night. I don't know. I ran across this TikTok account, and I don't remember his name offhand. He was what did he say? He was deconstructing his faith.
By the way, just real quick.
Yeah.
It is now, well, at least my time. It is 3:16 on 3:16. And that always makes me think of John 3:16.
Yep.
God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Whoever believed in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That's for somebody.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Jay, continue with this guy on TikTok. Go.
Absolutely. You can't sidetrack me like that, Doug. No, I got it. So I went down this rabbit hole with him. He was evangelical, and he was heavily in ministry. He grew up in a very religious household, church camp, all those things, and was in the corporate world and took a job into, was it there? You'd know the organization. It's a big teen thing that was recently brought down. But he talked about all the dysfunction in that realm, in the evangelical church, and he was involved in event planning and these big youth events and conferences, and he talked about how disillusioned he was because he was the event organizer. I'm actually going to reach out to him and see if I can't bring him on the show at some point. He was the event organizer for these big events that we know that if I knew the name of them, mission trips and so forth. But he talked about just the overwhelming dysfunction in how it was so contrary to the God that he knew. there was, talk about speakers, some of the big name speakers, the Joyce Myers and Jakes and, these, and others, I'm kind of drawing a blank. But, that for them to consider to have them go to their event and so forth, it was going to cost him $250,000 just for them to speak at that event. For those headlines, Joel Osteen, those people, that's what their rate is to show up at these events and speak for 10 minutes or half hour, whatever it is, $250,000. And that was, disillusionment, but it was also all the tasks he was in charge of, making sure the speakers and the bands, he worked a lot with the bands, and he had really great things to say about some bands. Like he had great things to say about Jars of Clay and some other ones, and not so great about other ones, because it was how they treated people, how they treated the people at these venues, their staff, the workers, that he was just blown away by how they were treated and how he was treated. It was really eye-opening. I have so many questions for him, but I wanted to know, you being around ministry as long as you have, if you've encountered that and kind of what your thinking is on that. Because I think we all know there's that aspect out there. And I know there are some people that just, the whole financial piece for some people is, disconcerting to people, and think that that's not God. And I have my perspective on that part of it, but I just want to know if you've run across it, and kind of what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, I'll throw a couple things out here. One of which, there's obviously the individual aspect of that, which is some people are raised in ministry environment, so
it speaks to a lot of the dysfunction you're talking about in your book.
Yeah, it absolutely, and and in that, it's become business.
Yeah,
and that's sad. That it takes on that approach, that people take that approach to it. I was fortunate enough to travel around, helping in a small capacity the Billy Graham Crusades for a number of years through my brother Jeff. Shout out to my bro, he's awesome. But Billy's a standard for me, right? They set a salary for him that wasn't ridiculous, and I'm not against anybody making money. I think God gives us wealth. It's what we do with it that's, the issue. So I don't have any problem with necessarily preachers and teachers making a certain amount of money.
Agreed.
The question is, what are they doing with it? And they don't answer to me for it. They answer to God. So anyway, having said that, but Billy just was above board in everything. He took a set salary that wasn't ridiculous, and I'm sure he sold books and he made money off of that. But, but he wasn't going to live this, elaborate, super rich lifestyle. He was just very humble. He grew up in humble means. He knew how to get along with humble means, as the Apostle Paul said. But the way that they did ministry, they were so relational. I still have great friends in Billy Graham Evangelical Association. We've been friends ever since the 90s, and they are great people. They are amazing people, and they treat everybody, across the board, just with love and respect. And there's no this, we're up here and you're down there. So that's become the gold standard for me. I mean, that's, I don't know that I'll ever become, famous enough to get a choice to treat people like they're below me. But that's not me. I love people regardless of their station. But I've seen it in ministry. I've seen people, that's kind of been disappointed. Some people, I had some expectations as to, them being a certain way or carrying themselves in a certain way. And they got sucked into the business part of ministry, into the Christian celebrity culture and all that kind of stuff. And, so that for me has become a thing of, I want to learn from them. I don't want to judge them. I don't want to, I'm not going to name names or any of that kind of stuff and say, this person's bad. This person's whatever. I should be praying for them. That should be my number one thing. But it's there. It does exist. I think it's one of the things that gives, church a black eye. Absolutely. And Christianity a black eye in general. And we've got to do better. it's like, and I've seen this, it's not necessarily a Christian quote, where they're saying basically, you should treat the janitor the same way you treat the CEO. And there's a truth to that. I mean,
Absolutely.
And I actually became good friends with the janitor at my high school.
Yeah.
And I was raised well. So kudos, shout out to my mom and dad for making me love people and treat them as, especially my mom, make me treat people as if they were as significant as the president or whoever. That you just treated them that way. And so again, Christians in the church, we've got to be the leaders in this. We've got short amount of time to make a big impact in our world. And if we're doing this thing where it's like, I'm so important that, I need X amount of dollars, or, man, I've got stories. I've got stories, and it's disheartening to hear those, to hear of that kind of situation where we're just not setting the example that we need to be setting the example in the world, right? It's no wonder, this is part of my second book that's coming out shortly, that people aren't beating down their doors to be in churches, right? Because what we're offering isn't very good. It's not, I make an analogy in relationship to restaurants, right? We're not serving 5-star stuff at our churches, and so it's no wonder that there's not a line out the door. So we've got to change that. We've got to be better. And the way to do that is to learn how to be family and learn how to love each other the way God has set the example for us.
Absolutely. I think same thing with my mom and dad. Like that's the thing to me. That's always my entire life has been the most important thing to me in choosing friends, relationships, companies I work with, whatever, is how you treat people. It's always been the thing that bothers me the most when I see somebody mistreated, whether it's no matter who it is. So amen to that. And you're right. I never really thought of it in terms of family, but that makes perfect sense to me now. I mean, it's amazing. Anyway, so
for family,
go ahead.
I was going to just say, for family, you drop everything, right? Like if my brothers or my sister or my parents said, "We need you home now," I wouldn't go, "Well, it's going to cost you, X amount of dollars to put me on a plane." And it's one of those things where, no, I'm going to find a way to get home because my family needs me. And, and there are levels. I don't want to equate everything as, it's totally equal in that respect, but we at least got to do better. I mean, we're just so not where the early church was. I mean, that, Jesus is our benchmark for us as individuals. It really is a benchmark as a church too, but the early church, they set the bar pretty high. They were loving on each other in such a way, that it was sacrificial, and that is agape love. It's going to require sacrifice at some point in time. And if you're not willing or able to sacrifice, you're going to have a hard time loving the way God has called us to love, because that's what Jesus did. He sacrificed himself for us. And he says, as he's done it for us, we should be doing it for other people.
Yeah. So speaking of the early church, perfectly into my next thing. So I know you had posted this a while ago. I think you had posted, but and it's been all over. I've seen so many different posts, and probably because we're doing the show and everything else. But I keep on seeing posts for The Chosen, and I finally watched that this week, late last week, in between last show and this show. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Don't know the day. Is season 3 like? How long is it going to be before I have to wait? Do you have any idea? No, it was really.
They're filming right now.
Yeah, I know.
So probably the fall. I would imagine we'll see it in the fall. I know it's too long. Maybe late summer.
Or we're gonna have to push them that.
Watch the reruns. I could watch them 100 times.
Sorry, I didn't see our chat here. I'm not sure if this is a friend of yours, but
she is a friend of mine.
Yeah, sorry.
Shout out to Tisha.
I did not see these come in. I'm sorry. I got caught up, Tisha. I'm sorry. Now I'm going to throw all your comments on here now. But no, I did really thoroughly enjoy the show, and I didn't really know what to expect. To me, there was a lot of hype and everything about it. I did not know the whole story about how it was made and so forth, how it's being funded. I love that aspect. And
Hmm.
I watched everything I can get my hands on of all the bloopers, the interviews and stuff. And it was really, really remarkable. Did you see the Christmas concert?
Yes. Went to the theater and saw it.
Oh, you did? I didn't know it was in it. That was one of the most unbelievable things I've ever seen.
One day they did it. It was a 1 day thing in the theaters.
I
And so,
mean, I
yeah,
that was, I would have loved to see it in the theater. I wish I would have known about it then. Cause I mean, it had to have been something amazing to be there. I mean,
it was
again,
pretty
the
powerful.
artists they had there, Brandon Lake was there for me. That would have been awesome.
Yep.
But yeah, they had, huge artists there, and it was just so beautifully done. And the versions of those songs were just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't shared it with Annetta or the family, but we'll definitely next Christmas that's going to be
Hmm.
a standard. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah,
I love The Chosen. That first episode when he meets Mary at the end
yeah,
and speaks the scripture that she heard as a kid. And oh
yeah.
my gosh, I can just tear up right now because it's,
There's
oh,
so many
so good.
scenes, and in
Yep.
season 2 ended with the Sermon on the Mount, build up to the Sermon on the Mount, and that episode I thought was just unbelievable. I mean, they were all great.
Yeah.
I thought it was just so well done. And in watching the bloopers, I was thinking this before I saw not the bloopers, but the other interviews of one of the things that I think people are responding to, and I feel the same, is the humility of Jesus for sure, but they made they made him so human in this that you could really, really relatable, jokes, the way he talks and, joking around it's just, they really did a great job of the casting and really bringing
Yes.
Jesus to life for people. Cause, he seems within reach and, there's been so many shows and movies over the years, and I don't think
Yep.
anybody's captured that essence of Jesus like they have. At least for
Yeah.
me, and maybe it's the season I'm in and everything else, but just from hearing other people's perspectives or anything, I think other people are saying the same thing. Is just, I love seeing that Jesus was a regular dude. You always hear that. Well, Jesus came to life and
Right.
he was a human. It's like, I don't think people catch that or like no until you see it. It's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, yeah,
This has been by far the most excellent uh, show and production and um, seeing Jesus. I think as close to
yeah,
as I mean as we could possibly see him in relationship to actually understanding that he was fully man.
yeah,
Right. He was the son of God, but he left, according to Philippians, all of his heavenly attributes and his godly attributes in heaven
mhm,
and became a man. It says he took on the form of a servant, right? He humbled himself, took on the form of a servant. So he lived as a man who was in complete surrender and obedience to his heavenly father, but he did it as a human.
yeah,
So to see all those human qualities in him come out, it makes him relatable. And that's great because we need to understand that we're called to do the same thing in the same way,
yeah.
right?
I think it was the thing for me too. Is like it didn't seem out of reach for me. So like what he's asking us to do and ask how he's modeling the behavior and all those things. It's like we can do this. He's
Yeah.
not asking so much of us that it's not attainable for us. No, we
Right.
can do
And
this.
he was,
It's the things we talked about. Some of the stuff we talked
yeah,
about. The simple things of treating people fairly and well, and the
yeah,
hugs and eye contact and making people feel seen and heard. It's like those are things we
yeah.
can all
And
do.
Jesus was empowered the same way we are empowered. He was filled with the Spirit, right? So it says when he was baptized, he came up, the Holy Spirit descended on him and it remained on him and it was also in him. And the same thing is true of us as believers. We have the Holy Spirit inside of us. Our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, 1 Corinthians 6:19, right? And it's the Spirit promises to be with us and on us on occasion to fulfill the purposes of God and to do the ministry of God, right? So we have the same Holy Spirit that Jesus had to do the same works that Jesus did. And that's why Jesus said, greater works shall you do because I go to the Father, because I'm going to paraphrase here, send the Spirit, right? So we don't have a real excuse. I mean, we get into trouble when we look at Jesus and we glorify his earthly ministry as something that God did,
Hmm.
right? God did it, but he did it through a man.
Right.
Again, who was fully man, fully God. But on the earth, he was dependent upon his heavenly Father. He said it in John 6 a couple times. I can only do what I see my Father doing. I only speak what I hear my Father speaking. So he was dependent on his heavenly Father to accomplish every miracle that he did, to accomplish every, all the resurrections, all the healings, everything that he did empowered by the Spirit. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives within us, so we can do those same things. The question is, are we going to surrender to a life that, we're willing to take those risks and walk in obedience? And are we going to hear clear enough to know God saying, hey, I want you to pray for that person? I remember, I'll just give this testimony real quick. One day after church service, I was walking out of the sanctuary, and a guy came up to me with a very frantic look on his face. And he said, I just went to the doctor this week. And I didn't know him really well. I knew of him, but we hadn't had many interactions. And he just hits me right out of the gate with, I went to the doctor this week. I had an MRI or some kind of scan, and I've got tumors all over my lungs, and my doctor is giving me 6 weeks to live. And, I was kind of in shock. I mean, I was, what do you do if that's the opening line of a conversation, right? And he just grabbed my hand and put it on his chest. And he said, I need you to pray for me right now. And so without having much chance to rehearse any kind of, religious prayer, I just prayed that Jesus would heal him. And he did. And that wasn't me. Wasn't my faith-filled, authority-driven prayer that did that. That it was his faith reaching out. But the Holy Spirit ultimately moved and worked in such a way that this guy was completely healed of his tumors and his cancer. And he went back to the doctors, and he was in full remission, and cancer is never coming back. So, God did that, but it was my willingness just to squeak out something with the name of Jesus on the end of it, right? Yeah. In agreement with what I believe is God's will for healing. And this guy gets healed, right? We all have that. We can have that opportunity. So I said we have them every day, but right. There are opportunities for us to do the works that Jesus did. The question is, are we willing to surrender to the possibility that I can be used of God to bring, a miracle into somebody's life, to bring, like you said, just joy into somebody's life by a smile or by a kind word or whatever. We've got to look for those opportunities. And if we're so self-focused on this is what I need, and my needs are more important than other people's needs today, we're going to miss those opportunities. And so he wants to do that with us as individuals, but he also wants to do that with us as his church.
Yeah. Great stuff, Doug. Great stuff. All right. That was awesome.
Yeah, was awesome. Always is.
Yeah. Yeah, this is emotional and draining as those first couple of shows were, the first 2 or 3, whatever they were. I've enjoyed these last 3 so much more. I don't have to tell the story, I guess, but it just, it's, again, seeing it from a different perspective, and I wasn't anticipating. I was hoping to kind of just put my 2 cents in every now and then when you're doing your thing, and just kind of supporting you and kind of sharing your story and your book, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more than that.
Yeah. This show is a conversation between you and me that other people get to enjoy.
Including when we talk about sports and food. We haven't even talked about food much. That's part of our plan too.
Oh my gosh. We definitely need to get into the food aspect of things.
Most definitely. All right, my friend, we need to go because you're on my show. I have another show to do.
Yes.
And I have an hour and 25 minutes or something to make it all happen.
I've got to do
my miracle.
March Madness research. I've only got an hour and a half to figure out every.
No, it's not. My knocking shows are not that serious.
Okay, good.
Just go go rest.
All right,
and pray that I can get this done in time. So
I'll pray for you, brother.
All right, my friend. We will. I will see you momentarily, and we will see everybody else next Wednesday. We'll be back live next Wednesday. We'll continue dive a little bit deeper into the family, the foundational identities of the church, and a couple other things we'll dive into next week as well. And we also are looking. Maybe it might be a guest next week. We'll see. We have several people we've identified that
all right,
reach out to and so forth. I'd like to get
Always.
somebody else on. don't want to always look at
Always
your face.
welcome.
So,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
Let's get some pretty people in here, and
Yeah. We
it'll
need to look
bump up our
into
rating.
filters. First of all, we may need some makeup or something.
Yeah.
We need something, you know.
I need Monica to help me out there. She's
Yeah.
a licensed cosmetologist and esthetician at one
Yeah.
point, so she could make me look prettier.
It's, a filter that does something, you know, makes me look like Brad Pitt or something might be better. I don't know.
Maybe we get one of those. Who did the filters? Was it Snapchat that had all those?
I think
filters?
originally it was Snapchat. Now Facebook has them all, and TikTok.
Oh,
has
do
them
they?
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right.
My
All
kids love it. They're playing, they're talking to Nana, and they're putting hats on Nana or whatever. Anyway, all right.
Too funny.
We gotta go. I am gonna cue the music since I didn't. I guess it was playing before.
Cue the music.
It's working. All right. We are out. We will see you all next Wednesday. Have a great week, everybody. Here we are.